Yes.
And they'd all come, and there'd be all these kids, and my mother took them all in, and she'd have blankets for everybody. We'd lie on the floor, sleep on the floor, and giggle all night, and talk to each other. All these cousins, they were cousins.
That's great.
Now, surely you had Norwegian language spoken. Yeah.
But they didn't want us to understand, and they started talking Norwegian. And like my bestemor would say, "Snakka du norsk," talk you Norwegian to me. Well, then we talk English.
So did you do religious training in Norwegian, or was the church in Norwegian? Yeah.
But we were confirmed in English.
In English. Okay.
I can remember Reverend Ralston
laying his hand on your head.
Marv Ralston has been very active in the Vesterheim, the Ralstons. And Harriet was interesting. She said one time, it was your farm people who kept us alive during the Depression because you'd bring food to us.
Mm-hmm.
That minister and his family.
Sure.
Oh, sure.
That was Reverend Ralston and Marv and Harriet. And that was
I'm
touching.
sure that
I
was
thought.
true. Yeah.
We never gave that any thought that we always had food
Right.
during the Depression.
Well, farmers were as self-sufficient as you could get even
Right.
before the Depression comes along. So yeah. Oh,
What
fun.
I thought was interesting is that my father was born in America. His father was born in America, but my father didn't speak English until he went to school.
He didn't. Okay.
And
Yeah.
he said he was 6 years old because they only spoke Norwegian at home.
Yeah.
And he was the third generation. So
So-
they really kept
Yeah.
their tight
Yeah.
little groups, back then. But they had the grandmother, Bestemore, who didn't speak English, so
It was
a
a
lot of
necessity.
it was for
Yeah,
her. But
Yeah. It would be rude to leave her out,
But then he said when he did start school, then all the other kids, teased him so much and chased him home and all that. So he decided he was never going to speak Norwegian again.
Well, they wanted to get.
They wanted to be American.
Yeah, absolutely.
Later, when he was older, he said, he sure wished he would have kept up with it and wished he would have taught us, but he didn't.
Right. Yeah, and you never grew up with anything other than English. Yeah.
Except my grandma when she was mad. But we never knew what she said.
And they knew swear words.
Oh, yes.
We knew some terrible swear words. We knew they were swear words.
We would often get in trouble. My mother was Norwegian English since my father was German. And so when we visit his side of the family, we would learn the German swearing. But of course, we never knew what we were saying, so there were many a times we'd get embarrassed.
Or your mother would get embarrassed.
Yeah.
There was a word that our Bestemore used, and when we were naughty or did something impish, she'd say, "Tusser, du er tusser." And we said, "What's a tusser?" And I never could find out. I couldn't find it in the dictionary, so I asked my relatives, and so when they came to America about 4 years ago, they brought this picture, and it said, "To tusser, tu tusser." And they are the ugliest, meanest little imps you ever saw. They're just awful.
And she was calling you this.
Tusser, you are tusser, you are tusser.
So that's what she thought of you. Okay.
There might be a little hyperbole in there.
So we learned our Norwegian.
There were a lot of things that being around my grandma that she did, but I didn't know they were Norwegian, really,
They were
until
just
I got
grandmas.
older.
Sure.
Like Ufta and Fida and this kind of stuff. On the left side, I thought everybody did that.
Were there other foods that you considered comfort foods when you went to grandma's or relatives and so forth that you had on special occasions? Oh
I
yeah.
made food.
She made klub as well. Yeah.
Klub.
Yeah.
Did your mom make that?
But and my mom too, but she learned it from grandma, but she made it with blood.
Yeah.
When they butcher,
Grandma did.
Yeah.
always in the fall.
Yeah. I had an aunt Marvel who would do this. We would butcher chickens and then make klub. Yeah, is what we call it.
And then the hunters would come out to the farm, and we had a slough, which they called it in those days.
Yeah.
And they'd get birds, so they'd hang them up in the tool house. So my mother would say, girls, go out and see what's in the tool house. I said, oh God, now we have to dress a chicken or dress a bird and pull out all the shot from
Oh, sure.
But she was always prepared for company.
Sure, sure. Did you make rumagrit and other things as well?
I don't remember her making rumagrit.
Or
but
sweet soup?
I was so
Sweet soup.
Sweet soup, yeah.
I was such a picky eater that I probably didn't try it if she did.
Sure, sure.
There's a story in the Lake Mills newspaper about my one grandmother making rumagrat.
Uh-huh.
And she loved rumagrat, so she went to the neighbors and they made rumagrat, and the young girl was making it and it exploded.
Oh,
And I guess if you get it too hot, it explodes, or it has to do with the milk or the cream or whatever it is. I don't
I
know.
suppose.
But it exploded 3 different times, and she finally got some made. And Mrs. O'Connor said, it's the best rumagrat I ever ate. To make her feel good. And it's in the newspaper, and they wrote a story about
Oh,
crazy
Yeah, I have a
story.
newspaper article of our grandma making lefse,
Oh, yeah.
and
that's-
she made them like this big around.
oh, sure.
She could turn. She had her own homemade griddle
Oh,
in the basement that her son-in-law and my brother made for her,
okay.
and
I
so
have a
it was
copy
like
of
a
that
whole
newspaper.
stovetop almost.
Yeah, I know they, on the
Yeah.
wooden stove, they would,
Yeah.
my mother made lefse on top of wood stove, you know.
Yeah.
And do you remember the wood stick that was in the rolled down curtains?
Yeah.
Remember
Oh,
the
yeah.
rolled down
Yeah.
curtain there?
Yeah.
That's where my grandmother kept her stick.
Oh,
Because she honed the end of it so it was real sharp. So she turn it over.
absolutely.
Good idea. She knew where she had it.
Yeah. No, and the kids wouldn't
Nobody
take it to
would
play
get
with.
But she didn't ever make lefse out of potatoes.
Oh, she
She
did.
always made the milk lefse.
Oh,
Oh, Hannah, your aunt
Yeah,
Hannah
I-
was the greatest.
So milk and flour?
Milk and flour.
Okay.
Put deep
Lard.
lefse
I
too.
think
And lard,
lard, yeah.
Yeah.
My
Little
father
salt.
wouldn't eat potato lefse. I tried to fool him one time when he came to Washington by buying some and taking it out of the package, because that's all we get out there.
Sure.
And so he took one bite of it and he says, "This has potatoes." And
Well, it tastes a little sour compared to.
Yeah.
to
Well, around here we'll make hardanger lefse, which is not a potato-based one, but it's almost maybe 3/8 of an inch tall. It's no yeast in it, but it's a more chewier flatbread.
well, they roll it that thick.
Yeah,
and-
yeah, yeah. So is that sound
That's hard.
familiar?
Well, I imagine.
Yeah.
I imagine.
milk lefse is
Is
different.
that different?
That's different, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll have to try that sometime.
Barbara Overstreet, our neighbor, always did that and made it out of milk, but I've never done it.
And my father, who lived in Granite Falls, told about he'd take the lefse his mother made and they'd put lingonberry or
Oh, yes.
jam on it,
Yeah.
spread it over, and then they'd roll it up, and then they'd end up with this, and then they'd fold it over and put it in their pockets and go skating.
Oh,
And that was their
and that was their lunch.
No, I can even describing it.
Oh, fun. So do you have any memories of crafts and things that the older generation would have made? Were they in the needlework of any
my
kind?
grandmother was always doing, she called it fancy work,
Uh-huh.
but doilies and
Oh, yeah.
tablecloths and things like that.
Did anyone tat or that sort of thing? Do you know this?
I think she
No, I-
did.
I've got a
But she
picture of
didn't. She did do, and I have a piece of it, and I had never seen it before, but it's round and it looks like almost a web, but it's a lot of thin lines of stitches, but they must be knotted or something.
Yeah, that could be tatting.
No,
Because-
no, it's not tatting.
Not tatting. Different from that.
Yeah.
here. Here's Vestimore with the peace quilt.
Oh, sure. Oh, fun.
She made that.
Yeah.
Grandma did a
But
lot
this
of
was-
crocheting.
And that's our Vestimore.
With
We're
wood.
calling me a tusser.
And
Oh, funny.
There's several in
So that's a different
it's
style.
different. It's yeah.
So did they ever do a hardanger embroidery? It's more of a flat.
I don't remember.